What is up, guys? Doing the first part of a mini-series I'll be starting for 1 down tips. This will not just be for solo, this will actually probably primarily apply to team play as well, since that was what most people do. However, I'll throw little 1 down solo tips while I'm in there as well. However, for most 1 down solo tips, probably the bulk of that information is just going to come from me talking about my runs as I'm doing my runs in my 1 down solo videos. So if you're more interested in that information, maybe I'll focus solely on solo runs at some point. But for the most part, this is going to be very general, and it's going to kind of be all-encompassing. So this first episode, I'm going to talk about the most base thing that you could possibly talk about when we're starting to talk about builds and weapons and so forth. So we're going to talk about perk decks. There are 17 perk decks total in this game. I'm not exactly sure how many of which are DLC and which are not. Crew Chief, Muscle, Armorer, Rogue, Hitman, Crook, set 6, 7, 8, 9, looks like 10 of those are in base game, so you can have them either by being a community member and by owning the game or whatever, not tied to DLC characters. So first off, we'll take a look at Crew Chief, and we'll observe some of its stats and benefits. So Crew Chief is a perk deck that is primarily designed to supply you and your team with some nice little bonuses. So we'll talk about the bonuses in general. I have a little sheet beside me here that gives me a general overview. So Crew Chief will give you plus 8% damage reduction to you and your entire team, and also giving you 16% if under 50% health. However, that last part only applies to you. Gives your entire team and yourself 50% stamina. Gives you a 25% increase to shout distance. However, this does not in fact inspire. It only increases your ability to shout out civilians, enemies, and so forth. It gives you and your crew 10% extra health and gives you 20% extra health total. Grants you an extra 10% armor on top of an extra 15% to you and your crew. For every hostage up to 10 hostages, you get plus 2% max health and extra 4% stamina. This applies to you and your entire crew. And finally, you get an 8% damage reduction for having a hostage. This applies to you and your crew. The crew perks do not stack, so only one person having Crew Chief in a crew is enough to get the team bonuses for everybody. Of course, if everybody ran Crew Chief, the crew bonuses probably wouldn't matter, as I don't believe they would stack with the self things. However, I don't know why you'd have 4 people running Crew Chief on 1 down. Regardless, although this is a good team build, this is definitely not good for, clearly not good for solo play. It doesn't provide a lot of player bonuses to yourself that would be intrinsically useful. It applies small boosts across the board and it's very general. However, it's not very effective for 1 down play. Perhaps with a highly coordinated team you could have one individual running Crew Chief. However, that one player would probably be severely handicapped by the fact that they're using Crew Chief, and they'd probably not be very happy about it. So we'll give Crew Chief a strike for being used in 1 down. Moving on to our next deck, Muscle. This is definitely an armor-oriented perk deck, although I've seen people use it with suit builds. On 1 down, it'd probably be most useful for having an armor build. So when we're talking about muscle bonuses, we're looking at an 80% total increase to your health as a player, a pretty sizable increase. You get plus 3% health regeneration every 5 seconds, which is pretty decent. It is less than the bonus applied by Hostage Taker Aced. However, a combination of the two would give you 7.5% percentage of health regen every 5 seconds, which is pretty good. It also applies a 15% chance for you to be targeted when you're close to your crew members. This can be negated with a skill in the Ghost Tree. However, since mostly anybody who uses crits picks up that skill, it kind of negates the purpose. However, the 15% extra chance to be targeted really only modifies some of the enemies' distances at which they'll target you. It only really affects it by a factor of a few meters. In the grand scheme of things, it's really not going to affect how much you're getting targeted. You might notice it to a small degree, however, most of that will you be paying more attention to the fact that you're getting shot than normal. At least in my experience. On paper, Muscle sounds like it would be a excellent perk deck for one down, given what the amount of health regeneration you can get, especially when combined with something like Hostage Taker. However, the issue with Muscle lies in the fact that the health regen does take a lot of time, and although it would be a good perk deck for more holdout type heists, the fact that even when wearing ICTV armor, you won't be receiving a lot of extra armor, meaning that your armor will still be shot in just 1 or 2 pieces. Unless you're extremely effective at armor gating in general, your health is still going to get shot to pieces pretty quickly, as you'll only be able to take a handful more shots than you normally would. Of course, a handful more shots can matter a lot in some instances. However, when we compare Muscle to other perk decks, as we continue on down this list, we'll find that Muscle is inferior in several ways. I'd put this in kind of a middle tier, saying that it's usable. However, I don't think it would be nearly as effective as some of the other primary perk decks that we're going to talk about. Alright, moving on to the next one on our list. Now we're going to talk about Armor. This is the go-to perk deck when you're talking about having armor builds in this game, primarily when paired with the ICTV. So the bonuses that it applies to you as a player: plus 35% armor, 10% increase to armor recovery rate, minus 10% armor recovery time for you and your crew, and this is the big one: 2 seconds of immunity on depleted armor with a 15-second cooldown. Now, the thing that's most incredible about this perk deck is the fact that it does increase your armor, which is rather nice, especially when paired with the ICTV. You can get up to above 400 armor, I believe. I'm not 100% sure. Well, let me take a quick look, because that's probably an important fact. That's Anarchist. Is this my armor? Is this the one that has hit? Well, I can just check real quick. Put some points in that. Change this to armor. Where is it at? It's up here at the top. Sorry, I should have looked at this beforehand. Changing to ICTV, we get up to about 280 armor. For some reason, I thought it was going to be a lot more than that. Regardless, this will allow you to tank a few more shots on one down than you normally would with standard armor. So this is probably the most armor you're going to be able to encompass and get whenever you are dealing with one down. However, the 2 seconds of invulnerability time that you get on the 15-second cooldown is the most vital part of running armor builds. Literally 2 seconds of invulnerability every 15 seconds whenever your armor breaks. That is something that you can keep track of and something that you can use and exploit to push objectives or move across areas when you need to in a pinch. The fact that you also get an increase or a decrease in time to your armor recovery rate also means that you'll be able to armor gate slightly more effectively than you normally would. I'll talk about armor gating more in a later video, as that's a very central part of being able to play one down effectively. However, I would say for an armor build, armor is definitely going to be the go-to perk deck for one down. Moving on to Rogue. This, of course, is my perk deck of choice for practically every one down video I've done so far. Rogue gives you a 40% chance to dodge, a mechanic in this game that allows you to completely negate damage that you can take. With the appropriate skills, you can get up to a base 55% dodge chance, which is basically a slightly weighted coin flip that says you either will take damage or will not take damage, which is rather nice. It also decreases your chance to be targeted when you're close to your crew members by a factor of 15%. Gives you a 25% chance to pierce enemy armor, which is good in case you miss somebody's head on accident. I don't know. And it also increases your weapon swap speed by a factor of 80%, which is rather useful. Dodge, or Rogue in particular, is especially good on one down due to the absurd amount of damage that enemies deal to you. Most typical units dealing around 250 odd damage. So being able to completely just negate that damage at any point in time is extremely useful. Some people have kind of a negative opinion on Rogue due to the fact that it's kind of luck-based and RNG in nature. However, you can't go in with the mentality that you're going to dodge every single shot that is fired at you, because statistically it's improbable. And more than often you're going to be getting hit about half the time, and the order in which you get hit and don't get hit matters. If you get shot 3 times, but then you were to dodge the next 3 shots, you've already taken 3 shots and might already be down, so your next 3 dodge shots might not matter. Of course, the algorithm doesn't factor in when you're going to get hit and dodged, and when you're not, that is automatically pulled whenever you get shot each time. At least I'm fairly certain. That would be really weird if the game predetermined a string of 0s and 1s determining or saying whether you were going to be hit or missed on a particular heist. Regardless, dodge is more used for, rogue in general is used more for skirmish tactics as opposed to armor, which would allow you to face off with enemies directly for slightly extended amounts of time. Of course, as the difficulty increases, as we go from, say, overkill up to 1 down, the amount of face-offs that you can do with armor, aka standing out in the open and being able to face enemies head-on, decreases as you go up to 1 down. Similarly with rogue, the amount of skirmishing you have to do, or poking in and out of cover and getting away from bad situations, the amount of that you have to do increases as the difficulty increases. There are just simply 2 different ways to play the game. One is very hit-and-run tactics, the other is more of a tanky outlook to it, although I use the word tanky with quotations around it simply because you just can't really tank very hard on 1 down. However, armor is a bit less RNG based. Rogue is definitely very skirmish dependent. You need to be able to get out of situations, and that's one of the benefits of it, is you're typically going to be using a suit when you're running rogue, and so that will allow you to have good movement speed and so on and so forth. As I said, it's my go-to perk deck. I find the most success with it personally, so I would give this one a check for using it on 1 down. Moving on, now we're talking about Hitman. No, I'm actually not going to say that this perk deck is complete garbage. That has changed within several semi-recent updates. Hitman gives you a 45% bonus to your armor recovery rate, which is incredibly sizable. Gives you 25% total ammo to akimbo weapons, gives you a flat 16% increase in your stability stat for akimbo weapons, and no matter what the situation, your armor will recover after 1.5 seconds, which is fantastic for the purposes of armor gating. On paper, Hitman actually seems like it would be incredible for 1 down. I've actually done duo 1 down runs with a friend of mine where we both used Hitman perk decks, and it was fantastic. The issue with Hitman is, although it does increase your armor recovery rate, it does not increase your armor. So no matter what armor you use, you're going to be getting 1 or 2 shot via your armor. So you have to pop in and out of cover. And any time that you're exposed or having to cross an area, the odds of you going down is pretty high, because you'll have extremely low dodge chance due to the fact that it doesn't add anything to your dodge or your health or whatever. Hitman is right on the cusp of being an incredible 1 down perk deck. However, due to the fact that Overkill is stalwart in having weapon bonuses to akimbo in this perk deck and not replacing it with something that would be a bit more beneficial to the player's survivability, Hitman remains in this weird spot in 1 down and throughout most of the game in general, although more on 1 down than anything else, where it's almost good but not quite good. So I'm going to put this kind of in the weird tier along with Muscle. I actually think that it does have some potential if some minor, not even major, but minor changes were made to it in the future. I'd like to see that at some point, however, we'll just see how that goes. Moving on, we're going to look at the child of Armorer and Rogue, which gives us the Crook perk deck, a hybrid mix of armor bonuses and dodge bonuses. Did I not? Oh, I didn't get notes for Crook because I'm silly. It's okay, I'll just pull it up right here. Alright, so Crook gives you a 10% increase to your dodge, 25% dodge chance while you are wearing a ballistic vest, 65% increase to armor while wearing a ballistic vest, and gives you a 10% increase in armor recovery rate. Why is this good? Well, it's mostly just good on lower difficulties and isn't really all that great on 1 down. The fact that you're having to choose between, you're not really choosing between armor and dodging and you're trying to take a middle path, lessens the effectiveness of each one. So although you do get an extra 35% dodge, that is slightly inferior to Rogue, and although it does increase your armor, the armor increase, isn't sizable enough on the ballistic vest to provide a bit of extra cushion to allow you to tank extra shots. So really you're just limiting yourself on the amount of dodge you can get. Even though it does increase your armory recovery rate slightly, it's not noticeable enough on one down to make a major difference. Could it be used? Absolutely. I think the dodge chance is high enough that it would allow itself to be used on one down. However, I'm still going to put it in the weird tier, or like the middle tier. I'm just going to call it the middle tier, where I would say it's usable with enough skill. However, I don't think it's nearly as usable and user-friendly as what we talked about with Armorer and Rogue. Going down to Burglar, this is a stealth perk deck. You're most likely not going to be using this in loud situations unless you have a stealth build and you botched stealth and you have to go loud for whatever reason. It adds 20% dodge, 20% armor recovery rate while standing still and crouching, minus 20% chance to be targeted while standing still and crouching. You can bag corpses 20% faster, pick locks 20% faster, answer pagers 10% faster, and move 10% faster while you're crouching. As I said, this was made to be a stealth deck with some minor loud bonuses in case things go south. However, with the very minor increase to dodge and a almost negligible increase to armor recovery rate with the conditions that you have to be standing still and crouching, Burglar is just not usable on one down loud. It just really doesn't provide you with enough benefits that would be tangibly useful. So we're going to put Burglar in with Crew Chief and just say that I would really advise against using this. Now we move on to Infiltrator, another armor-centered perk deck. Infiltrator gives you a 20%... Oh gosh, hold on. This is worded really weirdly. Sorry. You receive 24% less damage from enemies when you are within a medium range. 8% less damage from enemies when surrounded by 3 enemies or more. 20% melee damage for 7 seconds on a successful hit. This can stack up to 4 times. And 20% health regen on a successful melee hit. This has a 10-second cooldown. On lower difficulties, Infiltrator is really good with armor builds as it allows you to regen health, and since your armor won't get blasted to pieces in a matter of a handful of shots, and with the damage reduction that you get provided by the perk deck bonuses, as well as some bonuses from something like Underdog Aced in the skill trees, it's quite usable on lower difficulties. It allows you to survive armor shots and allows you to get back some health every 10 seconds when getting just a melee hit. It doesn't even have to be a kill. So using something like the Buzzer or the Kunai would be good because you could still use a tool that would regen your health, but also give you, it would give you, oh shoot, what's the word I'm looking for? It would have the additive effect, and it wouldn't just be a flat-out melee hit that you're trying to kill somebody with. Except for the Kunai, which of course you would want to kill with the poison damage, but that wouldn't technically proc a melee kill, that procs a poison kill. Regardless, the bonuses that Infiltrator gives you, I don't believe, I haven't used it personally on one down loud. However, just by looking at the numbers and looking at how it performs on lower difficulties, although it does work on lower difficulties, then it can be pretty effective. The bonuses that it gives due to the damage output on one down, I don't think it's going to be particularly useful. I'm almost hesitant to say that I'd even put it in the strange middle tier. I would probably advise against using this perk deck, simply because all of its requirements require enemies to be in a very close range to you, which is all well and good, except at that close range enemies will be doing maximum damage to you, and the proportion of less damage that you're going to be receiving from this perk deck's bonuses is not going to be enough to balance out A, the number of shots you're going to be taking, B, the amount of damage it's still going to be doing to you, and C, the cooldown rate on which you have to wait in order to regen your health. Again, I'd say with enough skill, this perk deck could be used. However, I'm not so sure that it would be a particularly advised perk deck to use. So moving right along, now we'll take a look at Sociopath. So Sociopath is a perk deck that I wish so badly was better than it is. Usable on lower difficulties, however, it definitely struggles as the difficulty increases, which makes me so sad because I feel like this perk deck would be so much fun to use if it was slightly better. However, I don't do balance and design for this game, so I don't make those choices. However, looking at the bonuses that Sociopath gives you, it gives you 8% less damage from enemies within a medium range, so less than Infiltrator, 10% health regen on melee killing an enemy, a 2-second cooldown on 1 down. That's probably not going to happen all too often, that you get a straight up melee kill unless you have points invested in the Fugitive Brawler branch. You get 30 armor regen on killing an enemy, and it's plus 60 if it's within a medium range. This is a 2-second cooldown. Now that's extremely good for armor gating, however, the cooldown on it, of course the cooldown is on it in order to prevent it from being nearly invincible due to the way that armor gating works. If there was no cooldown on it, you could maintain your armor up indefinitely and probably be effectively invincible if you're able to kill enemies fast enough. The 2-second cooldown on it, it would allow you to get shot, kill an enemy, get some armor back, possibly kill another enemy before you pop back into cover. However, the lack of extra armor provided by the perk deck, what I mean by that is it doesn't provide extra armor as though Armorer does, and it also doesn't have the invulnerability grace period. It means that you can get picked apart pretty quickly. A lot of these follow a similar style where if you play extremely conservative and extremely safe, you can make it work. However, once you have to start pushing and once you have to start moving and you actually have to actively engage with multiple enemies, these perk decks start to fall apart because they just can't stand under heavy fire on 1 down for very long. And finally, the awesomest thing about this perk deck is the 75% chance to spread panic on killing an enemy within medium range, which is on a 2-second cooldown. Panic is such a cool mechanic, and I wish so badly that this perk deck had slightly better health regen on melee kill and provided you with a little bit of more of a damage reduction, and maybe that the cooldown on the armor regen was a little bit lower, maybe 1 second. I'd say half a second, but half a second feels like it would be entirely too short, so I'd say a second would be okay. I almost want to say, like, on paper, this sounds like a usable perk deck on 1 down. However, I haven't extensively tested it myself. It would probably, I don't know if it'd have to be an armor. Armor would probably best suit this, however, due to the fact that you'd, even with ICTV, since you get no armor bonuses from this perk deck, it would probably get 1 or 2 shot regardless. You'd probably be just as well off wearing a suit with it for the mobility. However, I don't know that as a solid fact. I haven't tried this perk deck on 1 down. However, just looking at the numbers, it really doesn't appear as though it would, be all that good. The health regen on killing enemies is going to be almost entirely negligible unless you put points into melee, which in my opinion isn't necessarily a waste of points, but having to put so many points into it might not be that bad. Or having to put so many points into it makes it kind of bad. I might play with this build, with a Sociopath build in the future, for the sole purpose because I love this perk deck so much and I wish it got more love and I wish it was a little bit better. However, I'm going to put this probably on the lower end of the usable. So, like, maybe it's, and this is just me giving the benefit of the doubt, maybe it's usable. However, I'd say it's probably not, just due to how much more difficult it is to get health regen as opposed to Infiltrator. Moving on to Gambler. Gambler is another team-oriented perk deck, similar to Crew Chief from above. However, the main difference here is that you get it from ammo pickups, which is actually one of the coolest things, but also one of the biggest hindrances of this perk deck. You get plus 16 to 20 health regen to you and your crew on ammo pickups. That is not percentage, that is flat health rate. Like, you get 16 to 20 health to you and your crew on an ammo pickup. Again, this is on a 4-second cooldown. There's a 100% regen effect if your health is lower than another player's. This can stack up to 3 times. And plus 50% of normal ammo pickup is triggered for your teammates on ammo pickup. So you picking up ammo boxes also triggers for your teammates to an extent. This is another one of those perk decks that sounds like it would be excellent on paper, although due to the fact that you'd have to expose yourself so heavily in order to get ammo pickups frequently and consistently enough to get health regen for you and your crew, as well as to provide backup ammo for your crew, it just kind of falls short due to how much you're going to have to expose yourself and how much you'll probably go down in the process of trying to get the ammo pickups in general. Also, sometimes it's more effective to keep enemies from spawning on the map and trying to kill them out of the map or out of range, and that prevents you from picking up ammo pickups, which thereby hinders this perk deck. So, being forced to grab the ammo pickups is the severe limiter of this perk deck. I would probably not recommend using this on one down, simply due to the number of enemies that you're going to have to encounter and how difficult it's going to be to get ammo pickups without exposing yourself. You won't have a bunch of armor and you won't have a bunch of dodge, so you'll get shot apart in a matter of seconds. So I just don't really think that Gambler would be worth it ultimately. Moving on to Grinder. Grinder used to be this ultimate perk deck. Back when it first came out, it had some crazy values. It's since then been balanced to a more comfortable place on some of the lower difficulties. By lower, I mean Death Wish and below. You get plus 4 health regen every 0.3 seconds for 4.2 seconds upon damaging an enemy. This only applies to the 2-piece suit or the lightweight ballistic vest. This is on a 1.5 second cooldown. You get 40% extra health, and you get a plus 30% chance to pierce enemy armor. The amount of health that you get back from Grinder is way out of proportion with the amount of damage you're taking, unless you're playing extraordinarily safe, which again, as I was saying earlier, is one of the downfall of many of these perk decks, is how safe you have to play while using them in order for them to be efficient. If a perk deck does not give you the ability to take risks, I don't feel like it's worth it, because you will be caught in situations where a risk has to be taken, and if that risk cannot go in your favor, then the risk isn't worth it, and then you get downed, and things go bad. Moving right along, we're going to look at Yakuza now. The Yakuza perk deck gives you 0 to 60% recovery rate on health under 50%. It scales as your health decreases. And it gives you 0 to 20% movement speed on health under 50%, and this scales as your health decreases. Of course, extra movement speed and extra armor recovery rate for 1 down sounds awesome, except for the fact that for the movement speed to really count, you won't want to wear armor, so you'll wear a suit, unless you just want to be on par with a suit, in which case why wouldn't you just wear a suit? But if you wear a suit, your armor gets shot once, and then you get shot once if your health's really low, and then you die. Your armor recovery rate gets really high, except you'll get shot really quickly, and you'll die still, before you can take cover probably. What I'm trying to say is, Yakuza is good in theory, but it's probably not going to work, and it makes me sad, because it's another one of those perk decks that it tries to be different, and it uses different mechanics than other perk decks. However, it's still just, due to the execution, it's just not really that effective. Even on lower difficulties, it's not super effective, as I've seen. I like using it on stealth builds occasionally, hit myself with a Molotov while I'm away from guards and behind cover so that I can get the extra movement speed, because it's really funny. But past that, I haven't found a lot of use for it, and I've even experimented with it, honestly, on 1 down. It's just that how fast your armor gets torn apart, and how quickly you can lose all of your health when you're wanting it to be low, just kind of renders it ineffective on 1 down when you're trying to aim for survivability. Next, we're going to look at Ex-President, which is a mixture of health regen and dodge. So, this perk deck is interesting in the way that it works. So, you get 12 health stored for every enemy you or your crew kills. Stored health regen is activated when your armor starts restored after depleting, and the maximum amount of stored health depends on your equipped armor. So, the smaller your armor, the more health you can store. You gain 50% extra health storage space, 40% health, and 10% dodge. Killing an enemy will also speed up your recovery time depending on how much armor you have. The more armor you have, the less recovery speed gained per armor, and armor recovery speed is reset whenever your armor recovers. So wearing less armor, ergo wearing a suit, allows you to store more health, and it allows your armor recovery rate to increase more. And wearing something like an ICTV would decrease the amount of health you get and decrease the scaling of how much armor recovery time will be deducted. However, you'll have more armor. This perk deck suffers from the fact that how important armor gating is, so you don't really get to build up a lot of kills with your armor up, because your armor will be getting shot down and then you'll go back into cover. It doesn't provide enough dodge in order for it to be extraordinarily effective. Even when you're using the suit and skills such as Sneaky Bastard, if I'm mistaken, you can only get up to like 25% base dodge, which is still a quarter of the time, but in comparison to Rogue or even Crook, it just simply doesn't give you enough dodge to be extraordinarily useful. I'd put this in I keep calling it the weird tier. I'd put it in the middle, probably towards the lower end of the middle, simply because it tries to be the best of a whole bunch of different worlds, and it doesn't heavily specialize in anything. On lower difficulties, this is a really good perk deck, however, it just doesn't translate well into one down, again, due to the damage scaling of the enemies. Maniac is another team-oriented perk deck that benefits your teammates, and they'll actually love you for it. If anybody ever runs Maniac and they're playing with me, I love them, because they make me so much better as a player, and it's so great, because I literally get free armor, essentially. So 100% of the damage you deal is converted into Hysteria stacks, up to 240 every 4 seconds. The maximum amount of stacks that you can have is 600. 2% damage absorption for every 25 stacks of Hysteria. Hysteria stacks decays 60% plus 40 every 8 seconds. Members of your crew gain 50% of the effects of your Hysteria stacks, and Hysteria stacks from multiple crew members do not stack, and only the stacks that give the highest damage absorption will have an effect. TLDR. You really only have one Maniac, or one person running Maniac on a team if you have people running Maniac. The damage absorption is completely outclassed by how much damage you're going to be taking, except it cushions other players a little bit. However, the player running Maniac's probably going to have a bad day. I'd say for team play, coordinated team play, again, having a Maniac on your team would actually be kind of a good thing. However, Maniac itself might not be all that wonderful for the person using it. So I'm going to put it again in the middle tier. I know a lot of these are getting put in the middle tier, but the distance between these tiers is quite sizable. I want to enunciate that. Armor and Rogue are leaps and bounds above most of these other perk decks, and the ones that I've said I would not recommend, I just really would not recommend using. Like, I definitely would not recommend using Crew Chief or using Burglar, trying to do one down loud. It's just really not, or Yakuza, it's just really not going to work out all that well for you. Maniac, I could see it working well with a team. However, it will help your team more than it will help you if you're the one using it. So I would focus on team coordination when talking about that, and your team should really prioritize protecting you and allowing you to get enemy kills so that they can get the damage reduction. So, it's okay for that. There's a little bit of controversy when we're talking about Anarchist. Anarchist is a strange counterpart to Grinder in the sense that instead of regenning health, you regen armor. Your armor doesn't regenerate in the normal fashion, which is actually the bigger downfall of this perk deck. As the difficulty scales up, the usefulness of Anarchist scales insanely in a decreasing fashion. So I would call it inversely proportional is what you would call that. On Overkill, you can effectively be invincible with an Anarchist build. And then as you go to Mayhem and Death Wish, it's pretty balanced as far as I would say. Still extremely good in one of the higher tier perk decks if you want to put, and if you want to say tiers, which I guess I've been putting these in tiers the whole time, haven't I? Anyway, it's still a really good perk deck. But once you jump up to 1 down, even when you stick on an ICTV, due to the way that 1 down forces you to play with armor gating and so on and so forth and taking cover, you're really limited with this perk deck. So 50% of your health is converted into 120% armor. The extra armor is fantastic. You get so much armor whenever you put on this perk deck and you wear the ICTV. Actually, I think that's what I was talking about earlier when I said 400-ish armor. Let me go back to this one build so I can see. I'm pretty sure this is the one that gives you like 400. Yes, you get 400 armor plus a little bit whenever you're using Anarchist with the ICTV. So, although that in and of itself is really good, due to the fact that you have slow armor regen, because you get 10 armor regen on dealing damage with a 1.5 second cooldown. With continuous armor regeneration, the amount of which and the speed of which depends on the armor that you wear. Heavier armor will regenerate more armor, but in larger intervals, you can't armor gate effectively, so you can't get all of your armor back extraordinarily quickly by ducking behind cover for a handful of seconds. You'll have to wait behind cover for extended periods of time, or be able to poke out and kill enemies without suffering any fire in order to get your armor all the way back up. Also, snipers pose a major threat to people using this perk deck because you're sacrificing the majority of your health for a lot of armor. However, snipers will shoot through the armor because snipers are not affected by health gating. Or, I'm sorry, not by health gating, are not affected by armor gating because they will hit your armor and your health in one simultaneous shot, and people running Anarchist will end up getting one shot by snipers. Whether that happens on one down or not, if you're wearing a full ICTV using Anarchist and you have full armor, I'm unsure. I don't think you'd get one shot. However, you would suffer a major bit of damage, as most of your effective hit points are going to be tied up in your armor, and your armor just doesn't regenerate fast enough. I would say this is definitely usable, however, it's just not as good as it is on lower difficulties. I would say this is just shy of being in what I would consider the trifecta of good one-down perk decks. I'd say it's just shy because of how important I feel that armor gating is. However, this opinion changes from player to player. I just feel like this is just shy of being in the top 3. Alright, now moving down to Biker. Biker is one of those things that just in general sounded good on paper, and then they put it in the game and it's actually kind of trash if you ask me. You get plus 5 health and plus 5 armor on every kill you or your crew performs. Plus 1 armor or health for every 10% of health and armor missing. This cannot occur more than 10 times every 15 seconds. Minus 1 second for every 10% of armor, health, and missing. So the lower your health or armor is, the more and faster you can get health and armor back. Meaning that you get most of its effectiveness whenever you are lower on health and armor, and not so much effectiveness whenever you have higher health and armor. You want to be sitting on higher health and armor, and you don't want to be sitting on lower health and armor, unless you're running a Berserker / Frenzy build, which in that case it's going to be pretty scary because you're sitting at low health, and if you're sitting at low armor, it could be disastrous. This is really dependent on kills, which can be kind of difficult on one down, considering that the speed at which you can get kills is kind of limited to your build. There are ways to get a significant amount of kills quickly. However, I just don't feel like Biker is overall effective enough. I wouldn't even consider this in a usable tier. I'd probably advise against using this. I've really not seen people get a lot of success out of Biker. And last, but certainly not the least, we have the third perk deck in the trifecta of really good one-down perk decks. The Kingpin perk deck, one that I've been intending on using a lot more. I just haven't got around to it because it requires a very strange way of playing that I just haven't adjusted myself to yet, but I will in the future, I pinky promise. I've seen armor builds with this, I've seen suit builds with this, so I think in that sense it could be quite versatile. You get 80% health like you would with muscle, except this is the beautiful part about it. 75% of all damage taken while under the effect of the injector is converted into health, 25%, which is increased by 25% while you're under 50% health. This effect lasts for 6 seconds and has a 30-second cooldown. You get 1 second taken off of the cooldown for every 5 health gained while you're at max health. Of course, this eats up your throwable slot, which is one of the biggest downfalls of it. For one down in particular, it means you can't use something like your concussion grenades or incendiary grenades or whatever throwable you want to bring. And enemies nearby will prefer targeting you whenever possible while the injector is active. I looked at the long guide, and it actually increases the factor at which it changes how enemies look at you by a factor of 1,000. Like literally 1,000%. Enemies will target you if they can. So that's one of the downsides to it. However, poking out of cover, activating the injector, having near invulnerability when you're below half health, getting health back, and then quickly ducking back into cover after taking damage, it's incredible. It allows you to regen so much health so quickly, and it's usable every 30 seconds, and it's just... This build, or Kingpin, requires a little bit of tactical know-how to play, but that's what makes it so good, is the better you are at using it, the better it is. That's what I really like from perk decks. Certain things like, Gambler being tied to how much of something you can pick up, in theory should be good, but it's just really not. Something like Biker, that's dependent on kills, sounds like it could be good, but just as limited as you are in getting really quick kills on one down kind of limits its effectiveness, as well as how small the boost it gives you to the health and armor that you regen. However, I would say Kingpin overall is a highly effective perk deck, and I would say it's within the top 3 best. So, at the end of the day, let's do a quick TLDR of everything that we learned. Don't use crew chief. You can use muscle. I wouldn't recommend it. Armorer, good for armor builds. Rogue, great for dodge builds. Hitman is so close to being good, and I wish it was just a little bit better, because I would definitely use it more if it was a little bit better. So use it at your own risk. Crook, you probably could use it, however, Rogue and Armor are overall, they do each individual thing better than Crook tries to do both. You probably could use it though. Burglar, it's for stealth. Don't be dumb. I'm sorry. Don't act dumb. Infiltrator, you could probably use it, however, it just won't be nearly as effective as you wish. Sociopath should be better. Gosh darn it, Hotline Miami is a great game, and Jacket's a great tie-in character. The perk deck should be better. That's my opinion. Gambler, please don't use it, because you'll probably die a lot. Grinder, if the health regen was higher for 1 down, it would be better. However, balancing Grinder for 1 down will make it busted on other difficulties, so Overkill probably won't do that. Yakuza, sounds good on paper, not good in application. Ex-President doesn't give you enough dodge, really doesn't provide you with enough armor bonuses. Maniac, good for your team, not so much for you. Anarchist, just shy of being in the trifecta and making it, I guess, a quadfecta? I don't know. Anarchist is definitely a good one to use, however, it just won't be as effective with armor gating as something like Armorer, and I would personally prefer using Armorer over Anarchist in the case that I was doing a 1 down armor build. Oh, I totally forgot to mention earlier that Anarchist also has a 2-second, shoot, what is it called? Like a 2-second grace period of invulnerability whenever your armor is broken, every 15 seconds, just like an armor. I forgot to mention that earlier, so sorry about that. Anyway, Anarchist has that as well, which is a really good thing that it has going for it. However, the armor gating is kind of meh. Biker, don't use it. It's kind of bad. Kingpin, the third perk deck completing the trifecta of really good 1 down perk decks. Alright, this video was probably a lot longer than I would have liked it to be. However, I wanted to go in depth to each perk deck as much as I possibly could and weigh its pros and cons and talk about it a little bit. So, there's a lot of yakking in this video. Next video, we're going to go over actual skills, and we're going to quickly run through skills and talk about what you should look for in a build. Of course, in this particular case, a 1 down build. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you around.